My name is Judith Halston, and I'm 30 years old, and I used to think the worst kind of betrayal came with shouting, slammed doors, and obvious proof. I didn't realize it could arrive in something as small as a shoebox buried in the back of a closet we both used every day, tucked behind winter coats like a secret that had been waiting for me to finally touch it. Hey viewers, before we get into it, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button if you want more stories like this. Thank you. Now let me take you back, because none of what happened makes sense unless you understand how safe I thought I was. I met Joseph Mercer 3 years ago at a mutual friend's backyard barbecue, the kind with uneven lawn chairs, cheap paper plates, and music that was always a little too loud. Joseph stood out immediately, not because he demanded attention, but because he didn't. He had this calm steadiness, a quiet confidence that made everything around him feel less chaotic. He told jokes without trying too hard. He listened like what you were saying actually mattered. I was the one with the stable job and the structured life, the woman who'd worked hard to build something dependable, and Joseph felt like the missing piece, like the warmth that made the structure worth living inside. We clicked fast in that slow, comforting way that doesn't feel like fireworks, but still makes you stay up until 2 a.m. talking. Late-night conversations about dreams, weekend hikes, the places we wanted to travel, what kind of future we could build. Joseph had this creative edge to him, a love for storytelling and old music and little nostalgic rituals that I found charming. He made it sound like he valued loyalty the same way I did. Like commitment wasn't a performance, it was a daily choice. After 2 years, Joseph proposed on a trip we planned together at this scenic overlook he kept insisting I'd love. The wind was sharp, the view was unreal, and when he dropped to one knee, I remember laughing through my shock because it felt so perfectly us, simple, intentional, and sincere. I said yes with tears in my eyes, and Joseph looked up at me like he'd been holding his breath for years. In that moment, I believed we were locking in something unbreakable. I wasn't naive. I'd been in relationships before. I knew people could lie. I knew love could fade, but Joseph felt different because he let me be solid without calling me boring, and he let himself be soft without calling it weakness. I showed my commitment in real ways too, especially when life punched him in the throat. About 6 months into dating, Joseph lost a big opportunity. He'd been counting on something tied to his work that fell apart with no warning. I didn't make it dramatic. I just stepped in. I covered dates when money got tight. I helped with rent once without turning it into a scoreboard. I connected him to contacts in my network, quietly, the way you do when you're building a life with someone and their problems feel like yours too. Eventually, he landed something better, and I was genuinely happy for him. Not because it relieved me, but because I wanted him to win. Then came engagement, and the wedding machine started rolling. I paid for most of the wedding planning because my income was stable and Joseph was still rebuilding his savings. The venue deposit came from my account. The appointments, the fittings, the endless logistics, I handled the boring parts because I believe that's what partners do. I even passed on a promotion opportunity that would have meant relocating because Joseph wasn't ready to move yet. We're a team, I kept saying, and Joseph would smile, squeeze my hand, and act like he was grateful. Looking back, those sacrifices sting. Not because I regret loving someone, but because I realize how easy it was for Joseph to accept everything I gave while still keeping parts of himself sealed away, like he had a separate life I wasn't allowed to enter. Things started cracking about 4 months before the wedding. So subtly I didn't even call them cracks at first. We were living together in a cozy apartment in the city. Wedding gifts had started arriving stacked in corners, and I went into full nesting mode, organizing, cleaning, trying to make space for the life we were about to start. One weekend, I decided to reorganize the closet, pushing old boxes back, swapping winter jackets to one side, spring cleaning, energy buzzing through me. That's when I found it. A shoebox tucked way in the back, wedged behind shoes we never wore. On top in Joseph's handwriting was a label that said memories. My first thought was that it was something innocent, something sentimental, old family photos, childhood stuff, a time capsule I'd laugh about with him later. I remember smiling to myself as I pulled it out, thinking I'd tease him for being corny. Then I opened it. The air left my lungs so fast it felt like my body forgot how to breathe. Inside were photos of Joseph with a woman I recognized immediately, even though I'd only seen her once in passing on social media, before I stopped looking. Jade Calloway, his ex-girlfriend. Not 1 or 2 photos. Dozens. Them on vacations at parties posed like a couple who wanted the world to see they belonged to each other. Intimate shots, Jade kissing Joseph's cheek, Joseph holding her like she was something precious. Love letters in careful handwriting, ticket stubs from concerts. A dried flower pressed between pages like a scene out of a romance movie. It wasn't just a past, it was a shrine. And the worst part wasn't even the existence of it. People have history. People have old heartbreaks and old keepsakes. The worst part was where it was inside the closet in the apartment we shared, tucked away like something he wanted close but not visible. Like I lived beside it unknowingly while planning a wedding I was financing with my whole heart. My stomach turned hot and sour, and suddenly every conversation about we're a team sounded different in my head, like a line he'd learned to say when it benefited him. I held one photo longer than I should have, staring at the way Joseph's eyes looked when he smiled at Jade. I didn't recognize that version of him. He looked freer, like he wasn't careful. I forced myself to put everything back exactly as I found it, even though my hands were shaking. Then I took a walk. I didn't call a friend. I didn't scream into the air. I just walked until the tightness in my chest loosened enough for me to think. That night over dinner, I brought it up calmly, the way you do when you're trying to give someone a chance to explain without turning it into war. Joseph, I said, keeping my voice steady. I was cleaning the closet and saw that memory box, the photos of Jade. What's that about? He paused mid-bite and looked at me like I'd asked something ridiculous. Then he rolled his eyes, rolled his eyes like I was a child interrupting adults. Seriously, he said, flat and dismissive. Grow up. My past is none of your business. For a second, I just stared at him because I didn't understand how someone could say that to the person they were about to marry. My mouth went dry. We're engaged, I said carefully. We're getting married in 4 months. Doesn't that make us each other's business? It feels disrespectful to keep that stuff hidden in our home. Joseph set his fork down and crossed his arms, and there was this smug little smile on his face that made my skin crawl, like he enjoyed watching me squirm. Disrespectful, he repeated. It's just memories. Everyone has a past. That doesn't mean I'm hung up on her. Jade was a big part of my life before you showed up. If you're insecure about that, maybe you need to work on yourself. The way he said before you showed up hit like a slap, as if I was an outsider who should be grateful I'd been allowed in at all. I'm not asking you to burn it, I said, trying to stay gentle, even as my heart pounded. But keeping it hidden in our closet makes me feel like I'm competing with a ghost. If it's so innocent, why not tell me about it? His expression hardened. The warmth I thought I knew slipped away like a mask being removed. Because it's none of your damn business, he snapped. I don't grill you about your exes. This is my private stuff. If you can't handle a box of old photos, maybe you're not ready for marriage. God, you're acting like a jealous teenager. There it was. The flip. The twist of logic that made me the problem for noticing something wrong. Joseph didn't apologize. He didn't reassure me. He didn't even attempt empathy. He just defended his right to keep a curated archive of another woman in the home we shared while treating my discomfort like a character flaw. That night, I lay awake beside him, staring into the dark while Joseph slept like nothing had happened. I kept hearing his words in my head, grow up, none of your business. And the box didn't feel like a box anymore. It felt like a message. Not to Jade, to me. A quiet reminder that no matter what I paid for, no matter how much I planned, no matter how loyal I was, there were parts of Joseph's heart I was never meant to touch. And once I saw that truth, I couldn't unsee it. Because the next morning when Joseph kissed my forehead like everything was normal, I realized something that made my stomach sink even deeper. He wasn't afraid I'd leave. He was confident I'd stay. And that confidence was the most dangerous thing in our entire apartment. The morning after that conversation, Joseph acted like nothing had happened. No apology, no tension. He hummed while making coffee, kissed my cheek on his way out the door, and reminded me we had a tasting appointment with the caterer that weekend, like the night before, hadn't cracked something open between us. That casual normalcy messed with me more than anger would have. It made me question myself. Had I overreacted? Was I being dramatic? That's how gaslighting works, not by screaming at you, but by convincing you that your instincts are inconvenient and therefore wrong. But the box didn't disappear from my mind just because Joseph pretended it wasn't there. Over the next few days, the apartment felt staged. Joseph smiled too easily. He was gentler than usual in public, louder about how solid we were when friends asked about the wedding. At home, though, little things started standing out in ways they never had before. He angled his phone away when he texted, took it with him to the bathroom, laughed at messages he didn't share, then brushed it off with just work stuff, even though his work rarely made him laugh like that. I told myself not to spiral. I focused on logistics emails from vendors, seating charts, deadlines, because control felt safer than emotion. But once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. One night, Joseph came home later than usual, still wearing that crisp white shirt he liked, sleeves rolled up like he wanted to look effortless. He smelled faintly like a bar, not the casual drink kind, but the lingering mix of citrus cleaner and perfume that doesn't belong to you. "You working late?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral. "Yeah," he said too quickly. "Meetings ran long." I nodded. Didn't press. I was learning that Joseph mistook silence for compliance. Then came the moment that sealed it. We were sitting on the couch, some forgettable show, playing in the background, when his phone lit up on the coffee table. The name flashed just long enough for my brain to register it before Joseph grabbed the phone and turned it face down. "Jade." My chest tightened, not with shock, but with confirmation, like the final piece clicking into place. "Who was that?" I asked, calm on the surface burning underneath. Joseph exhaled dramatically, already annoyed. "Seriously, Judith, old friends can talk. You're being paranoid." There it was again, the dismissal. The reframing of secrecy as normal and my discomfort as instability. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse him of cheating. I just watched the way he avoided my eyes, the way his jaw tightened, like he was offended I'd noticed. And suddenly the memory box wasn't the issue, it was the symptom. That night, I didn't sleep much. I stared at the ceiling and replayed everything I'd given him, everything I'd adjusted around him, the promotion I turned down, the rent I helped cover, the hours I spent supporting his dreams while mine waited politely in the background. And for what? To be told I was insecure for wanting transparency from the man I was about to marry. The next few days were cold but quiet. I didn't push. I didn't argue. I observed. Joseph started coming home later. His excuses became vaguer. When I asked how his day was, his answers were short-guarded, like he was protecting something fragile that wasn't us. And the box, still hidden, still untouched, felt heavier with every passing hour. That's when something in me shifted. I stopped trying to fix it. I realized I wasn't going to compete with a memory or beg for honesty from someone who benefited from my silence. I wasn't going to argue my way into being respected. If Joseph wanted to live like his past was sacred and untouchable, I'd take him at his word. So I started detaching, quietly. I smiled when expected. I nodded through conversations. I stopped bringing up wedding details unless necessary. And while Joseph assumed he'd won, assumed. I'd finally accepted his version of reality. I began planning my exit with the same precision I'd once used to plan our future. He didn't notice. Because people like Joseph never notice when you stop fighting. They only notice when you stop caring. Detachment is a strange thing. From the outside, it looks like calm. From the inside, it's a clean, surgical grief. The kind that doesn't scream, doesn't beg, doesn't leave fingerprints. It just plans. Once I accepted that Joseph wasn't going to change, that he didn't see my hurt as something worth addressing, everything became painfully clear. I wasn't losing him. I was losing the version of him I thought I was marrying. And that version had never really existed. So I got practical. The first thing I did was return the engagement ring. I went to the jeweler on my lunch break, hands steady voice, polite. It was custom, so the refund wasn't full, but I didn't care. The amount didn't matter. What mattered was the receipt. I folded it carefully and slid it into my bag like a document that proved I wasn't crazy. Next came the venue. I canceled it online, reading the confirmation email twice, just to make sure it was real. The deposit was non-refundable, which stung for about 5 seconds. I'd paid it with hope, and hope is always the most expensive thing to lose. Still, I printed the email, clipped it neatly, and stacked it with the ring receipt. Then I found an apartment. A 1-bedroom closer to work, quieter with big windows and a better commute. I toured it alone, imagining mornings without tension and nights without that box haunting me from the closet. I signed the lease the same day. When the landlord handed me the papers, I felt lighter than I had in months. Another receipt, another confirmation, another step out. I canceled shared subscriptions, transferred utilities into Joseph's name only, untangled our life one thread at a time without announcing it. No confrontation, no dramatic speeches, just quiet removal. And through all of it, Joseph remained oblivious. He thought my silence meant acceptance. He mistook my emotional withdrawal for maturity. He had no idea I was already gone in every way that mattered. Then came the box. I bought a shoebox from a small stationery store near my office, the kind that looks almost identical to the one I'd found in the closet. Same size, same shape. I brought it home and placed it on the kitchen table like a project. Inside, I placed every receipt: the ring refund, the canceled venue confirmation, the apartment lease, utility transfers, subscription cancellations, proof of everything I'd dismantled while he was busy protecting his nostalgia. On top, I added a single note: "My future is none of your business." I tied the box with a simple ribbon. No sarcasm, no mess, just symmetry. That night, Joseph went out for drinks with friends. He didn't ask if I wanted to come. I didn't pretend to care. While he was gone, I packed a suitcase with essentials, clothes, documents, the things that actually belonged to me. I left my key on the counter, placed the box gently on his pillow, and walked out of the apartment we'd once called ours. No note beyond that, no goodbye speech. Just absence. My phone started buzzing before I'd even reached the elevator. Text first. What the hell is this? Are you serious right now? Judith, you're being ridiculous. I didn't answer. Let the words stack up like evidence of exactly who he was when he lost control. The calls came next. I let the first two ring. Answered the third. Explain yourself, Joseph snapped, voice sharp with disbelief. He sounded offended, like I'd violated some unspoken rule by choosing myself. It's over, I said calmly. The box explains everything. He laughed, bitter and loud. Over a stupid memory box, you're throwing away our future because of some old photos. That's petty as hell. I stayed silent long enough for the weight of my calm to sink in. You're overreacting, he continued. Jade and I are just friends now. You've always been too sensitive about stuff like this. Friends who text late at night. Friends whose memories needed a shrine. I'm not discussing it, I said. Goodbye, Joseph. His tone shifted desperation bleeding through the arrogance. You'll regret this. No one else is going to put up with your control issues. I hung up. Blocked his number. That night alone in my new apartment, surrounded by boxes and unfamiliar silence, the confusion finally had room to breathe. I didn't cry right away. I just sat on the floor and let the reality settle. I hadn't overreacted. I'd finally reacted correctly. The weeks after I left were quieter than I expected. No dramatic fallout, no public meltdown, just space-wide, echoing space that forced me to sit with everything I'd swallowed while trying to be understanding. I didn't badmouth Joseph. When mutual friends asked, I kept it simple. We ended things. It wasn't working. No details. No accusations. I'd already said everything that mattered with that box. I didn't need witnesses. My new apartment felt bare at first, just a bed, a desk, and unopened boxes, but it was peaceful. No tension humming in the walls. No secrets tucked behind coats. For the first time in years, my thoughts didn't have to negotiate with someone else's ego. At night, though, the memories crept in. I replayed moments I had brushed off before, times Joseph dismissed my concerns, joked about my planner brain, or told me I worried too much. I remembered staying up late helping him prep pitches while my own deadlines waited, turning down opportunities because now wasn't the right time, always flexible, always accommodating. And then his voice echoed again. Grow up. My past is none of your business. That sentence stopped hurting and started teaching. I threw myself into routines I'd neglected. I joined a gym near my apartment, the kind with cracked mirrors and no frills. I ran until my lungs burned, lifted until my arms shook, letting the anger burn off layer by layer. I dusted off a side project at work I'd shelved during wedding planning and poured myself into it. My boss noticed, complimented my focus, floated a raise, said, "You've got your fire back." He was right. About 3 months after I left, the updates started filtering in. Not from me looking, but from people who didn't know how to keep quiet. Joseph and Jade Calloway were officially together again. Social media made it look poetic. Old flames reunited, smiling photos, captions about fate and timing. At first I wondered if I'd been wrong, if maybe nostalgia really had been harmless. That illusion didn't last. Cracks showed fast. Friends mentioned awkward tension, Joseph complaining about money, Jade pushing business ideas that never materialized. They moved in together too quickly into a place farther from the city, and suddenly, Joseph wasn't showing up to gatherings anymore. Then the tone shifted. Someone casually mentioned Jade had a temper. Someone else said Joseph looked exhausted, drained. The charming, creative energy he'd once defended so fiercely turned volatile under pressure. Fights escalated, money disappeared, Joseph's work started slipping. The irony was brutal. Everything he accused me of being controlling, being dramatic, it came roaring back in his life, just not from me. Jade questioned him constantly, tracked his whereabouts, picked fights over nothing. And when Joseph tried to set boundaries, she flipped the script the same way he once had with me. Sound familiar? By month 5, the updates weren't whispered anymore. They were blunt. Jade drained his savings, chasing a startup idea that fizzled. Joseph missed deadlines, lost credibility at work. Friends stopped inviting him out because every conversation turned into a vent session about how unfair his life had become. I listened without gloating. I didn't feel victorious. I felt validated. Then came the first message. A text from an unknown number slipped through my filters one afternoon. "Hey, Judith, it's Joseph. New phone. Just wanted to check in. Can we talk?" I stared at the screen for a long time before locking it and setting the phone down. No response. Silence is a powerful thing when someone finally understands they're not in control anymore. He tried again a week later, an email this time. "I've been doing a lot of thinking. I handled things wrong. The box, I get it now. I miss you." I archived it. That's when I knew the shift was complete, because the man who once told me my feelings were none of his business was now desperate to make them his refuge. Joseph didn't stop after that first unanswered message. Silence to someone like him wasn't closure, it was a challenge. The emails became longer, more emotional, apologies layered with excuses. He admitted Jade wasn't what he thought, that things had spiraled, that he'd been under a lot of pressure. Each message carried the same undertone: "I need you to fix this." Not once did he ask how I was. Not once did he acknowledge the way he'd spoken to me when I was the one hurting. Then his family stepped in. One evening, as I was finishing a workout, my phone buzzed with a number I hadn't blocked. His sister, Lila. "You're being cruel," she said without greeting. "Joseph's a mess. He made mistakes, but so did you. You don't just walk away after 3 years." I let her talk herself out. When she paused, I said calmly, "I didn't walk away. I was pushed." Then I hung up and blocked her too. A few days later, Joseph's mother left a voicemail, tight-lipped and demanding about closure and doing the right thing. I deleted it without listening to the end. Their family had always been loud about loyalty, when it benefited them, and silent when accountability was required. The real escalation came when Joseph showed up in person. 8 months after I left, I was walking out of my office, new role, better pay, confidence settling into my bones, when I saw him standing near the lobby doors. He looked thinner, rumpled. The self-assured calm that once drew me in was gone, replaced by frantic energy. "Judith, please," he said, stepping toward me. "Just 5 minutes." I didn't stop walking. I threw the box away, he blurted, following me. "Deleted Jade's number. I messed up. I know that now." I turned to him then, finally, and the look on his face told me everything. This wasn't remorse. It was fear. Fear of being alone, of facing the consequences he thought he could outrun. "This is over," I said evenly. "You need to leave." His voice cracked. "You're doing so well. I see it. We could have this together again." Right on cue, his phone rang. He put it on speaker like it was a weapon. His mother, his sister, voices overlapping, demanding, accusing, telling me I owed him another chance. I waited until they finished. Then I said, "My past with you is none of your business." The words landed hard, familiar, final. Joseph stared at me like he'd been slapped. Realization dawning too late. Security approached, and he backed away, humiliated, powerless. As he was escorted out, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. The final encounter came a month later at a mutual friend's wedding. I almost didn't go, but I refused to let my past dictate my presence anymore. I arrived with Adam Reeves, a man I'd met through hiking groups. No fireworks, no drama, just steady kindness and genuine respect. Joseph was there, alone, watching. He cornered me briefly, desperation flickering in his eyes. "Seeing you happy, it hurts," he said. "Give me another chance. I've changed." I smiled, not cruelly, not smugly, just honestly. "You're irrelevant now," I said. "I've built a better life without you." He had no response. A year later, my life looks nothing like the one I planned with Joseph, and everything like the one I deserved. Adam and I are solid. My career is thriving. My home is peaceful. I learned something important through all of this. Don't compete with someone's past.